I'm Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
And this is Fish Jelly.
What'd you kill Jesse for? What'd you kill Jesse for?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's earlier than we normally do this.
Why is that?
Well, it's really you because you woke up a little earlier.
Man.
Am I lying?
Nah, lies.
Jeez. Someone asked, does Aggie like to be spanked? Our hairless cat. Because
Yes.
they also have a hairless cat and they have noticed that their cat likes to be spanked. Yes, she likes taps on her butt.
Yes, we do very rapid taps, but it's a very disturbing display of emotional range.
Yeah, because she seems like she's in like part euphoria and then part like I mean, you wouldn't know if she's being abused or if she's enjoying it, but she's purring and then she'll lick us. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, she's a weird bird.
Some boot clapping going on in her brain. I don't know.
She also likes to eat her tail.
Yeah, she suckles her tail like a kid does a thumb.
And it's usually when she's like happy, I would think.
Yeah, she's comfortable.
She's comfortable, yeah.
But it's so disruptive because it's so loud.
It's very loud and then it's wet. So then she likes like sit on your chest.
Yeah, right.
Eat her tail or suck on it, and then now her tail's wet, and then it's like slapping me in the face, which is so gross.
But the sound she makes are something akin to.
I need to record it one day so I can like have it on a loop because it's pretty disturbing. I saw that Blockbuster Video, they tweeted that they're coming back.
Okay.
Which caused some confusion because a while ago there was some like cryptocurrency thing attempting to buy like the name to use for the URL or something, but then Dish Nation owns, which we learned from that documentary, The Last Video Store.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Dish Nation owns the rights to Blockbuster, and they don't want to give it up to this cryptocurrency entity. So of course people are assuming that means that maybe Blockbuster's coming back as like a streaming platform. That would be exciting. Although nothing would replace like an actual video store. So I don't know that I need another streaming platform, but I don't know that them opening up actual video stores would be... A lot of people don't even have DVDs. Because we had a friend come over last week and they bought a DVD to bring to our house so we could watch a movie. And then when they were going home, you gave them their disc back. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, no, keep it because I don't have a DVD player. So I wonder how many people don't even have, just like how no one's modern cars don't have CD players now. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting.
Well, we still have an old VCR, which hasn't been used in probably a decade, but...
Yeah, the last time you turned that on it wasn't even in our last house, I don't think.
I don't think so, no.
So yeah, it's been a long time.
But in case, I need to use that technology.
Moving on, so RuPaul's Drag Race All-Star Season 7, we watched episode 11, which is the semifinal, basically. Mm-hmm. So, of course, going into it, we were wondering, how are they going to pick a top 4? Because the score count's all over the place. So, So the gag is, RuPaul says for this final challenge, which was the Drag Race Gives Back Variety Extravaganza, which was basically each queen doing like a talent. Again, which is customary. Whomever wins this challenge gets 3 stars. Mm-hmm. So now the person who is in the bottom, Shea Coulee with 1 star, could actually end up in the finale. Mm-hmm. And of course, as things turn out, Shea Coulee ends up winning with Monet Exchange. Mm-hmm. But... what were some of the variety numbers that stuck out to you?
Well, Monet's doing opera.
Monet sang opera. It was breathtaking, I thought.
Well, also frustrating because it's like you've had this talent that you don't bust out ever. I feel like she'd have gone so much farther already if she had. But
I mean, but now that because I would say of all the queens on this season, she's probably the most notable. Now that everyone knows she has this talent, I could see her going on tour just doing opera. I mean, or doing shows, in New York or LA where she just does opera. I was very impressed. And then Shea Coulee performed an original song. And in the beginning of the episode, when RuPaul is asking each queen, what are you going to do? Shea Coulee says, "Oh, I'm gonna perform a song I created. It's if you mix Luther Vandross with Janet Jackson." So of course I was like, okay.
We'll see about that.
We'll see about that. And she didn't disappoint.
Of course
she
not.
looked like Janet. I mean, she looked like she could be Janet Jackson. It was very much like 1987.
The hair.
Janet Jackson hair. And then she had on very much like a Rhythm Nation style jacket, but it was like a short skirt. And the song was actually quite good. The choreography was great. Mm-hmm. I was impressed by that. So those two lip synced to a Kylie Minogue song, which was okay. Mm-hmm. They end up announcing RuPaul says Monet wins, but so now the top 4 is Jinx, Monet, Shea Coulee, and
there's a tie for the fourth spot.
And there's a tie for the 4th spot between Trinity and Jada Essence Hall. And RuPaul says, well, Monet, because now you have the most stars, the most legendary legend stars with 5, you have to choose between the 2. And of course, we knew she had to pick Trinity because they had an alliance. Even though she and Jada are very friendly and Jada's like Miss Congeniality. But I think we all knew, including Jada, that she'd have to pick her twinner who she had an alliance with. So she does. But then RuPaul sort of alludes to the fact that I'm not done with you other 4 girls yet. So then RuPaul says, okay, for the finale, the bottom 4 queens are going to also participate in like a lip sync smackdown and they can win $50,000. So I really like this season because they're giving each queen their due exposure because they're all winners. Mm-hmm. So they all deserve equal time.
I know it'd be nice if there wasn't such flagrant brown nosing though. Like there's no criticism. We can't have any criticism.
I agree, but I also, like I've said before, you can't say this person's a winner and then criticize them too harshly because you already announced them a winner.
That's true, but that's not, you don't have godlike status. It's
but
like,
I agree.
You won your season, but it's like you can still turn out some raggedy bullshit.
Moving on. Oh my God. So there's so much Drag Race that I can't watch it because they've announced like Belgique, another season of Australia, Canada's Drag Race season 3 started. We watched 2 episodes.
No, 3.
We've watched 3 so far?
Have there been 3?
No, I think we just watched 2. It doesn't matter because I'm not into it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't even recall these queens' names. Like none of them are remarkable enough to even stand out in my mind. Some of them are annoying.
Oh, many are annoying. I do like Lady Boom Boom.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you any of their names, but that's all I have to say about that. You put down a list from TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival.
Yeah, they're doing something.
Are these movies you've seen or movies you're excited about?
They're movies that they're announcing like one title at a time.
Oh, okay. So you have a list of titles. So what is the significance of The Woman King?
Well, that's Viola Davis.
Oh.
And I believe in John Boyega. I'm sure you've seen the poster art for that. Maybe not. But yeah, they've announced that to be a TIFF, which feels like a very TIFF film.
The Fabelmans?
That's this new Steven Spielberg film.
Which you've all... No, oh, sorry.
No, can't talk about that.
Okay, next, My Policeman.
But Steven Spielberg's never gone to TIFF.
Well, he doesn't need to.
I know, but that's such a bizarre...
I do think it's weird when these super big films or people end up at these film festivals. It's like, well, you don't need the shine or the exposure, but whatever.
No, but they need the prestige,
the critical acclaim. Yeah.
Gaining entry at some of these things for their awards run or whatever they're trying to do with it.
Next, My Policeman.
Yeah, I have this book that I haven't read yet, but it's a gay romance starring Harry Styles.
Oh,
which
I'd be interested in that.
So you haven't heard about that?
I think I have actually.
Okay.
This cat is terrorizing us. Grab her. God. Next is Something Called Bros.
Something Called Bros is premiering at...
Oh, is that gay movie?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not interested.
You're not?
I'll definitely watch it. I'm not a fan of Billy Eichner.
I'm not at all, but I'm very curious to see... And they have a great supporting cast that I fear will be limited to like cameo sequences to...
There are some black artists who I know are in it, and I know I like them. So if only for them, I would watch it. But yeah, Billy Eichner rubs me the wrong way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, the Knives Out sequel.
Did you see the first Knives Out with Daniel Craig doing that terrible accent.
Is that
like a murder mystery?
I might have seen it on an airplane.
Oh my god, maybe. I can't believe how apeshit people went for that. I did really enjoy Jamie Lee Curtis in it, and Toni Collette. But that is coming. The sequel is going to be a TIFF.
Lastly, on the come up,
Sanaa Lathan directed a film.
Oh,
I think that was the first movie that TIFF announced. But yeah, I don't understand why they're doing this piecemeal.
But speaking of Sanaa Lathan, if you want to see some genetics in action, look up Sanaa Lathan's mom.
Oh yeah,
they look like twins.
Yeah,
and the mom is stunning, and she's
strange.
Beautiful, naturally gray hair. Like she doesn't color.
No, she's beautiful, but
she's gorgeous, and they literally look like twins. Yeah.
So I think that there are more announcements. You know, because TIFF usually has like 300 movies. Or more sometimes. And then Venice will announce its lineup on the 26th.
Moving on, we did receive questions about advice. So what I did is I took several questions and sort of took little pieces from them to make 3 very basic questions. Mm-hmm. So here we go. How do we make friends? I feel like we have to answer these separately, but we'll probably share the same.
Okay.
What are you looking at?
The questions.
I already told you the questions.
Oh, because I hadn't thought about...
Oh, I guess we didn't talk about... Yeah. Well, I guess we'll rough through it. Okay, so how do we make friends? I initially thought I'm the worst person to answer this question because I don't have many friends. Historically, I've always kind of been a loner. But then I thought, I probably am a really good person to answer this question because... What I think I should do is just sort of say what I think my problem is and why I don't have friends. And then that's like a cautionary tale to people to not do what I do. So what do I think my problem is? I have a fucking attitude. Mm-hmm. Like people do shit or say shit that I don't like. And it's just like, I'm cool on them. Like immediately I just don't even think about them. Another problem I have is I don't ever initiate anything. I don't ever ask people to do anything. Even people I like. It just never occurs to me. And I think part of that goes back to just being a loner. Because, in grade school, I can recall having one friend. In middle school, I had 2 friends, but then that didn't last long because as I hit puberty and it was very obvious I was gay, then kids didn't want to be around me. In high school, I had like 2 female friends, but other than that, no one wanted to talk to me. And then in college, I was just like a loner because I was busy. So I think I developed this attitude that like, I just do what I want to do. And you do the same thing. If I want to see a movie, go to a restaurant, if I want to travel somewhere, go on a cruise, whatever, I'll just do it by myself. Mm-hmm. Like, so it never crosses my mind that, there's this thing I want to do. Let me see who I can invite. No, I would just go do it.
I think I used to do that, but there'd always be, I don't like feeling held back by somebody being tentative. So yes, I also am kind of a lone wolf and prefer my own company.
Right. So I think,
but that's been born out of experience because people tend to be. I think the difficulty for me in making friendship is you have to get to that place of a certain mutual vulnerability, and I feel like probably personally I have a problem letting my guard down. In a fashion that would make sense.
Well, that's a good point because I don't have that problem. I feel like I can be quite vulnerable, but I think what I experience is people not seeming... Like, I can see why people would want me around, but I feel like often like a clown. And I guess maybe part because I have a fucking attitude is like, I'm tired of being interesting. Like, can other people be interesting? Can other people... Like, it's like, that's great that you want to be around me, but I'm not engaged. I'm not... Like, I often feel like I have to be the one.
Oh, yeah, that'll cause an automatic shutdown and be like, well, if you have nothing to contribute to this conversation or even are aware of what I'm trying to talk about, then it's just like,
So that creates an environment where you don't feel... Like, whether you're like you or you have you're not less inclined to be vulnerable or someone like me who isn't, it still creates an environment where we don't want to be vulnerable.
Right.
Because I feel like you won't care.
And it's not that I feel like I can't be. I think it's just out of years of kind of situations where it's like, well, that was a waste on this person.
Yeah. But, other factors include, so, saying all the things of why we can't make friends, I think sort of will then explain how I think you probably could make friends. We've also, especially for me, I've moved around a lot. Mm-hmm. like as an adult, like going off to college. And then even during college, I moved once to out of state, then came back, then moved out of state again. And then within that state, like moved to somewhere else, came back, moved to California. Then I think having lived in LA for the past 11 years, logistics play a big part in making friends because, you know, 9 miles in LA could take an hour and a half to travel by car.
Yeah.
So it's just very difficult to, you know, get to people. So propinquity is a big factor.
Like every relationship.
So flipping that around, I think what would make sense to me on how to make friends is to be patient and forgiving with people and give people slack. Like, you know, when like if people rub you the wrong way or maybe they don't get you right away, give them a chance. And, you know, it's funny because as rigid as I am with that, I often say, like, people complain a lot about having a hard time finding a hairstylist. So a lot of people bounce like, oh, that person did my hair, I didn't like it, so I went to a new person. And then you keep bouncing around. But the reality is, you need to give that person who did your hair, because let's say you go to a new person, they cut your hair and you like it 75%. If you gave them a chance and went back and gave them feedback on the 25% that wasn't right, then maybe next time it'll be 90%. But if you keep jumping around, you're always going to be at that 75% or even lower satisfaction rate. So it's like you have to give people a chance.
Well, it's about,
and I don't.
Well, you know, that's about clear, concise communication.
Right.
And I think that there's a fear of confrontation. Nobody wants to tell, you know, it's like this person's an expert in their craft and you're coming at them like they don't know what they're doing. But you didn't like what they did to you, so it's fair.
And I think that relates to also understanding that I think another thing I have a hard time with is reconciling the fact that some people may only be in your life for a certain reason. So maybe that person is good for talking to you about movies, or maybe that person's good for going out drinking, or maybe that person's good like to go on a run with you, or they go like hiking, or maybe we like to work together. Mm-hmm. Or I had friends, you know, not many, but there were one or two people who I would study with. Mm-hmm. So I think being open to accepting the fact that not every person is going to be like your best friend who's like integrated into so much of your life. The other thing too is when you're young, so you had a much more traditional college experience than I did. Like you lived in the dorms and you made some really close friends there. But it's also like that environment is so unique to a time and a place and a situation.
It's a hothouse, yeah.
But now that it's like, I'm a 43-year-old man, I'm very busy, I have a career, I have outside interest in projects, I have a home to maintain, a body to maintain. Like, it's true, right? Like, it's not like when you were younger and you can be up all night and eat like shit and never exercise. It's like, well, now I have to think about like my health. And so
now I have to think about my health.
Well, but you know what I mean? It's like I don't have a ton of time.
You're like, now a warning?
Now a warning? So, yeah, it's like, I don't know. There, you know, last night we hung out with some people and it was nice because it's something we don't normally do. And like, we were just sitting on their rooftop patio and like drinking wine and talking, and that was lovely. Mm-hmm. But, you know, can I do that every night? No. And I think when I was 23 years ago in college, I had a lot of time to just bullshit, and we don't have that now. So getting back to me never making or initiating anything, I feel like it's important to make plans. Because I'm the type who says, oh, we should hang out. Mm-hmm. And then, or someone will tell me that. I'm like, yeah, we should. Well, should is not the same as like, let's make a plan. Let's say on Sunday at 3:00 we'll meet for coffee. I don't ever do that. Mm-hmm. So then the next question is, how can someone be our friend? So I guess what would someone have to do to really like make you feel like, oh, you could be my friend?
This is your last chance to impress me?
Yeah.
I feel, unfortunately, is maybe a bad practice you and I have had. But I don't know. I don't think I have a concrete answer for that. I think
relating to all the things I've said we do or that I do that make it difficult, probably a person has to pick up the slack. So like you probably have to initiate things, like literally ask to do something very specific, like at this time on this day we're going to do this. Yeah. And I think just be like interesting and engaging and like, I don't know. A lot of people are nice.
A lot of people are nice. You know, I probably also have I think a tendency to get overexcited if I do like somebody's vibe, and then I probably become automatically overwhelming because I'm like, oh, you know this? Well, let's talk about these 35,000 things.
Well, yeah, I think for you a problem is that you have a very extreme interest in film and literature, but more so film. I mean, it's overwhelming. Even for me, I still am like, oh God, it's a lot, but I'm used to it. So yeah, but getting back to what other people could do, I think just picking up the slack and then just being a little more patient with us too, probably, or individually.
Yeah.
Like, I am busy, I have a lot of things to do, but we can always find time. Right? You can find time to do things you want to do. It's just, I don't have time to waste. But it's not like, oh, I'm so important. But it's just like, I think as a function of being a loner and doing so many things on my own, what I really enjoy is to just sort of chill. So sometimes the idea of like, oh, I'm really enjoying just like relaxing. And then like, oh, you want me to get up and then go to a bar. And that's not really that appealing. I think doing things that don't involve chaos, like loud, dark places with a bunch of people, would really appeal to me. Like doing things when the sun is still up, that where two people can actually like communicate without screaming.
Sure, yes, that's more conducive for friendship. I do, I'm somewhat of a night person, but that's not,
I'm up very early. It's like, I'm surprised. I mean, I couldn't even count. It would take less than probably 3 fingers to count the times that someone said like, oh, let's meet for coffee early in the morning.
Oh yeah, nobody does that.
I mean, that hasn't happened, but that would be something I would absolutely do because I'm up every day by 6.
Nobody walks in LA.
Yeah, like I could easily go grab coffee at 6:37 any day because I, obviously don't need to be working that early.
I know, but just, 6 a.m. in this city is not a sexy time.
No. But friends don't need to be sexy.
This is
which
true.
Is another
this
issue.
is true, but I think as gay men in a couple, I think that complicates our ability to make friends.
We've talked about this before,
We
but
have.
I feel like, I think being gay, there's this awkward tension of like, it seems like people don't want to interact with you unless they find you attractive. I feel like I might be guilty of that, maybe not as overtly, but yeah, obviously someone you're more attracted to or drawn to will get your attention more. So it's like, that's a problem that I think I have. I'll speak for myself.
No,
But-
same. Yeah.
But that's a terrible habit, and friends don't need to be sexy. And moving on to the question that you weren't fully prepared for, but I did mention, someone asked, what are movies that depict friendship in a way that resonates with us? And initially I couldn't think, but then you offered a suggestion that actually would be
For you,
perfect
yeah.
for me, which is the film Beaches. And I remember watching that as a kid and getting so emotional. And it wasn't because the lady died of cancer. And I think at the time it didn't make sense, but every time I would watch it, I would get very emotional. And now as an adult, I realized that it was this long-standing friendship that transcended like propinquity, it transcended frequency. It was just like, we're connected, and every time we meet, it's like no time has passed. And being there for that person, like Beth's character is with Barbara Hershey when she's sick, like she sort of drops everything to go be with her. That really resonates with me. And then you also helped me think about that movie, not the Breakfast Club, the Broken Hearts Club.
Oh, with Dean Cain and Zach Braff.
And Zach Braff. And I remember watching that and thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have this little ragtag group of friends? And in college, I didn't have that, but that would have been the time. Like now, it's too late. Because quite frankly, if I meet someone my age who's like just has nothing but time and just wants to chill and play video games and smoke weed, that probably isn't very appealing to me. Like, don't you have a career and goals and outside interests, and don't you want to grow? And not that people can be content where they are, but it just feels like that's a red flag to me. Like if you're just always, another word that is a big turnoff is when people say they're bored.
Oh yeah, automatically.
If you say to me you're bored, like I will just immediately like drag you out of my mind.
Yeah.
Were you able to think of any films?
Well, I think there are a couple different categories, as I want to do. But as far as like the queer fantasy I wanted to experience based on films I saw, films like and of course a lot of these were very white because that was what if was available to me in a small town if I could find it. Very white, very I was hobbled by HIV.
Yeah.
but things like Longtime Companion and Jeffrey. It's just like, oh, when I'm an adult, I will be able to have these friendships and this kind of camaraderie. And Queer as Folk, of course, the HBO
TV series.
But again, also very white. And I'm from Minnesota, and a very small town in Minnesota. And I remember fleeing as soon as I could to college in the Twin Cities, and being immediately disillusioned by a mostly white gay population that was not advocating for friendship in any kind of real way, because my only real friends I felt from that period were the straight people that I still correspond with to this day. But so there are those kind of films, and then there are films about friendships between women always resonated because there's like Steel Magnolias, but every now and then you'd see something about two men like The Killing Fields, or I think something that always made me very sad was Stand By Me, because I had in high school very close-knit friendships. I was friends with all the people that smoked weed and dropped out of school, however, but realizing at a young age that, oh, this won't transcend time. I will leave and it'll be like how it feels in Stand By Me. Maybe I'll come back sometimes and maybe not, but...
Well, that's that. So, in the Sorry to This Man section, there were several comments on the review we did for Nope. Mm-hmm. Because I had said that young Keith David looks like Tevin Campbell. And in the video, when I show young Keith David, it's a portrait of him. Mm-hmm. And it's actually Keith David. So there were comments like, that picture is of young Keith David. Yes, I know that. But in the film, we actually see a scene where a person playing a young Keith David is in the horse stable with a young Daniel Kaluuya. Mm-hmm. So that person playing young Keith David is who I was referring to, but the image I show is actually a picture of young Keith David. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I know that, but both of them still look like Tevin Campbell. So that was the point I was trying to make.
Poor Tevin.
Poor Tevin. With such a beautiful voice. Yeah. And he's working again, so good for him. Mm-hmm. So films released we didn't cover. My Old School.
I saw this out of Sundance, and very interesting concept, but I didn't want to rewatch it, so I don't think I even brought it up to you. But there was going to be a different version, I think, in the late 90s, also starring Alan Cumming. But I feel like this compromised product. It's about in I think 1993 Scotland. This huge scandal about this kid that suddenly shows up who says his name is Brandon Lee. So, right after the real Brandon Lee died, who looked very odd and strange. And it turns out he went back. It was some 32-year-old that went back to high school and fooled everybody.
I am familiar with this.
Yeah.
Movie. And was I watching information about it with you?
Probably.
Yeah.
So the real person, Brian...
Oh, because I read about the real person.
And
yes.
he refused to be on film, but he recorded... He spoke about this experience and why he did it, and Alan Cumming is there. It's the actual man's voice, but he's
depicting him.
He's depicting him.
Yeah.
And Lulu is affiliated with it as well.
Oh, Lulu.
But anyway, that came out, and again, that sounds a lot more interesting, I think, than it is. But I was kind of bored with it.
Next, the Nan movie.
I asked you if you wanted to see this because I know that you kind of like Catherine Tate. But it's a movie version of one of her characters, and it was a busy week.
Okay, movies we watch for fun. So last week we talked about like Michelle Williams and like, does she even act? And then you mentioned in last week's podcast that she's in a movie called Wrath, a 7 Deadly Sins story. So we watched it that same day. Mm-hmm. That shit was interesting. And it's so simple. Michelle Williams plays an attorney who starts dating another attorney, and we find out that he's a very jealous, possessive person. But it's just on a level that's just insane. Like, it makes no sense. And then he is kind of violent towards her, so she tries to break up with him. He tries to kill her, but she kills him. The end. It's
like sleeping with the enemy on warp speed. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no time to develop anything, so it just seems like chaos. And then her mother is played by Tina Knowles Lawson, who's Beyonce's actual mother. Neither one, I think, is meant for the big screen or the small screen. You can tell that all of the work was probably allocated to them memorizing their lines and then just getting them out.
Yeah.
There's no acting happening.
Tina Knowles, the casting is very compelling, right? Because I feel like Tina Knowles Lawson is a mother figure to Michelle
Yes.
Williams. So I'm sure that they had a nice time doing this film. But yeah, Tina Knowles Lawson's line delivery kind of reminded me of Kennedy Davenport.
Oh my God. It's so funny you say that because I was watching on YouTube this morning a compilation of Kennedy's funniest moments. And I was thinking that. Do you remember when Kennedy did that one runway challenge where she was dressed up like a bird on fire?
Yes.
Do you remember what she said the inspiration for the costume was?
No.
She said...
She's Destiny's Child?
She's like, it was a long night of hooking and the trade didn't like the session. So he had gutted me and set me on fire. But I didn't die. I crystallized. And bitch, I came back as a glamazon to stomp the runway. But the way she says that is kind of like how Tina Knowles Lawson delivers her line.
Yes, and lots of chopping of vegetables, but only one vegetable.
Okay, the mom, Tina Knowles Lawson, her character, they have this mansion. It almost looks like Bill Gates' mansion on the coast. And they're in this enormous kitchen, like this luxe gourmet kitchen. And every time we see, it's not just her character, it's Michelle Williams' character and the bad guy, whose character name, I think his name is Anthony Cooper or...
the actor. Yeah.
The actor. I liked him. But... each one of them, there's a scene where they're chopping vegetables, and it's just like one vegetable, and no other ingredients are nearby.
No, but Tina Knowles Lawson is very intently chopping.
And her outfits are all like these very fitted jumpsuits that clearly she is like snatched up in them. Like she is full body Spanx. She looks nice, but it's a little overdone. The one thing I will say is... Lifetime is not known for having these black women and their hair situations on point. But I will say Michelle Williams looks great. Her hair looks great.
She did look good.
So I don't know if in her contract she was like, there needs to be a budget for my personal hairstylist to make sure I look right. But she does look great. I did enjoy watching the movie, but I don't think...
Antonio Cupa is his name.
Antonio Cupa.
And then we didn't talk about Romeo Miller.
Oh, Romeo Miller's in it, Masterpiece Son. I thought he was fine. He's more eye candy than anything, probably.
Yeah, I think the limitations that in the script benefit him because he doesn't have anything really dumb to say.
Yeah, but I was going to say that Michelle Williams, I don't know.
Her name is Chastity in it.
But, Toni Braxton is now a Lifetime queen. She's part of that series called Fallen Angels Murder Club.
Oh, God.
And you didn't watch any of it, but I did. The basic premise is there is like a book club, but they're all ex-felons. And then they're reading these books, deciding like if they want to try to, like they're murder mystery books, and they're deciding if they want to try to solve the mystery. So it's almost like kind of like Scandal-ish. And, Tony's not a great actor either. So I feel like Michelle Williams might have a career in like Lifetime
a
movies.
niche market. Yeah. I think you commented when we were watching that it was awkward watching her be so sexual.
Oh, that's the other thing. Michelle Williams is a pretty successful gospel artist, and she in Destiny's Child was kind of the more like conservative one. But I think that might have also been because she did have Christian music, and she can't dance at the level of Beyonce and Kelly. So I feel like she was just kind of the more reserved one because of that. But in this movie, she's very sexual. And it's very jarring because it'll just be like, she just wants to get on this man and ride him and like out of nowhere. So that was interesting. Moving on, something called Flesh and Bone.
Oh yeah, I had started that the week that James Caan died and finally finished it with Meg Ryan and Dennis Quaid.
Oh, I saw part of that.
It's okay. It was directed by Steve Kloves.
Oh, and then is that Mark Hamill? Or
that's the next film. But Steve Kloves, who directed The Fabulous Baker Boys, Flesh and Bone was his follow-up. It was just okay.
Is Sean Connery in Flesh and Bone?
No. Sean Connery. So for some reason, it came up and I wanted to watch something casually. But The Presidio, which I'd never seen, starring Sean Connery and Meg Ryan as his daughter and Mark Harmon as a San Francisco policeman, a detective, actually.
You were really bothered by Mark Harmon's hair, but I thought he looked really handsome.
He looks like a square Don Johnson. to me. And I know my mother liked Mark Harmon. He was just fine. He seemed miscast to me.
Lastly, we watched Anything's Possible, the movie Billy Porter directed and wrote. Or
Did not write, no. And actually, I think that's a strength of that film is the script.
So we saw there are billboards for this movie in LA. So we saw it and we had heard about it. And of course, for me, I thought, oh, this is going to be, because anytime Billy Porter's on screen, he's always so extra, which I don't like. So I assumed this movie was going to be sort of tacky and loud. But I actually quite liked it. It was
very sweet.
It's very sweet. It's about a young woman in high school. She's trans. And she starts dating this other boy in high school. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like the complications in their relationship. There are weaknesses in the story because at first the entire school is very supportive of her as being trans. And then when she starts like dating the boy, everyone's very like supportive. But then also there's a point where people turn on them and they're quite transphobic and homophobic. So it kind of reminded me of that movie I watched that's based on a musical with the boy whose mom buys him the red shoes. That I thought was Dear Evan Hansen, but it's something else. I'll have to think about it. But anyway, it's kind of like that. Like, what community are they in where the school kids are so accepting of her, but then also on the drop of a dime they aren't? And then they bring up issues of like trans, like specifically for her, like this trans woman using the bathroom. So they make her use like a gender neutral bathroom in the basement and. Some of the messaging, I think, was handled kind of in a clunky way, but overall, I thought it was a very sweet movie. And the main actor, the girl,
Ava Rain,
I thought she was quite captivating.
I agree, and
I could see her being in a comedy.
I liked her chemistry with is it Abukar Ali, the who played Call.
Yeah,
and her mother.
Oh yeah, her mother,
Renee Elise Goldsberry.
I liked,
who we know from something. Oh, she's in Hamilton. But in Tick, Tick, Boom as well.
Okay. I'm going to let you go through the projects of interest while I step away for 1 second.
What's the movie? The movie you're thinking about, is it Everybody's Talking About Jamie?
Everybody's talking about Jamie.
That.
You didn't see it, but that movie also fell flat for me because everyone in the school is sort of, it's in reverse. They're all like picking on him. And then at the very end, like with seemingly no development, the little gay boy takes the straight boy bully kind of to prom. And then everyone's like, this is great. And it's like, hold up. Y'all were bullying me and calling me faggot and every other word. And then now all of a sudden you're like supportive of me and like wearing this dress to prom. That's how Anything's Possible felt in reverse. Like,
yeah, it does in its third act get a little messy when it's like, oh, you're at this very kind of, not rudimentary, but this very clear-eyed, level. I wish they had just kind of stayed
for sure. But that being said, I would recommend it. It's on Amazon Prime, so you can talk about the projects of interest.
Well, some of them, because I thought there was one you would be interested in. But
well, you can save that to them.
Spike Jonze. I didn't realize Spike Jonze has not had any projects since 2013's Her with Joaquin Phoenix, but he is developing some very secretive Netflix series that there have been reports from the sets being very like a lot going on. Then Gregory Nicotero, who's a makeup artist, who's worked on a ton of stuff, announced that he's trying to make a film about the making of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead in a style that's much like Tim Burton's Ed Wood, about the making of Plan 9 from Outer Space. So that's, I think, could be interesting. Nicotero's directed lots of episodes of The Walking Dead. But yeah, there's a Belgian filmmaker who's directed, I don't know, like definitely over 10 films. I think works too much. I don't really
works too much.
I don't think I love most of his films, but he did a film in Joaquin Lafosse. He did a film that's pretty good with Isabelle Huppert, of course, back in 2006 called Private Property. He has announced a new project yet again called Un Silence, starring Manuel DeVos and Daniel Auteuil. And those two actors, of course, I'd probably watch anything for. So, that's interesting, but I don't know. I think at one point I saw his career going in a different direction. But and then the last thing that Apple TV is doing a Godzilla television series, and Kurt and Wyatt Russell have joined the cast.
Oh,
They have not.
your mom will be excited about that.
The article I read was they have not worked together since 1998 Soldier, which I often talk to you about because it's not a good film, but my mother loves Kurt Russell,
Yep.
and I'd come home sometimes and she'd have that movie on mute
Just to see him.
because she didn't like it, but she liked how he looked in it.
All right. Unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section. So Taurean Blacque died. He is best known for being on Hill Street Blues. I think he did like many seasons because he's in like almost like 150 episodes. But he was also like on What's Happening, which I used to watch, and Sanford and Son. And I always thought he looked like Teddy Pendergrass, but he was also, I didn't know this about him, that he was a huge advocate for adoption services. And this was in LA County. He was asked to do work for like the LA County Adoption Services, whatever. And he struggled. So he wanted to adopt and struggled because he was an unmarried man, but ultimately he pushed through, and he, ultimately, using that word again, adopted 10 children.
Oh my god!
Plus, he had 2 from like a marriage. So
He's like Angelina
he survived
and
by
Mia Farrow.
Yeah, he survived by 12 children and many grandchildren. But yeah, I think he was in his 80s. Next is Shonka Dukureh, who we know from the Elvis movie. She plays Big Mama Thornton. Oh. She died. She was only 44, and that was, I think, her only role. God. But she definitely, I remember her. I thought she had a great look, and she sounds great. She sings a hound dog in the movie.
Yeah, isn't she playing Rosetta Tharpe?
Oh,
Isn't that? I thought that was who that was supposed to be.
Oh.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, and then lastly, Rebecca Balding died. She was in her 70s, but people know her from Soap and God, what's that other Charmed. But she has a very recognizable face to me, so when I saw her picture.
Charmed, the series with Rose McGowan and Shannon Doherty.
And Alyssa Milano.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, so goodbye to those people.
Oh.
Okay, so the secret movie this time around was my selection.
And I was very, very happy to see this because I love this movie.
Well, I was a little annoyed because every time I pick a movie, you have like an attitude about it because it's not.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do. Anytime I pick something silly, you're like.
Well, if it's just like something so random, B-Boy Blues I think was a good pick, but you know.
Well, I think part of it is like talking about a movie that I think I could have fun talking about. So, you know, I'm not as pretentious as you are. So when I think about a movie, I think, oh, it'd be funny to talk about. So even like a shitty movie, like the 2 Lifetime ones we did, the one was very fun for me to talk about. But anyway, I discovered this movie because I was reading a list curated by Michael Musto, who people may know as the storied writer for The Village Voice. Mm-hmm. He had a list of like movies, like camp movies that you probably never heard of. And each movie had like a short description. And for this movie, the description he wrote was a bald whore on the lam. Mm-hmm. And then there was like the word pedophile in there. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, I have to watch this. Mm-hmm. So the movie's called The Naked Kiss.
Which I've actually talked about before because I watched Shock Quarter sometime in the past year.
It's a 1964 film directed by Samuel Fuller.
Who's a favorite, yep.
Starring Constance Towers and then... who's the pedophile?
Michael Dante.
But then who's the cop?
Anthony Isley, who looks just like Michael Murphy to me. And then a bevy of supporting women that are notable alums all over the place, including Virginia Gray, Patsy Kelly, who played Laura Louise in Rosemary's Baby. Woman that would go on to marry Russ Myers, Edie Williams.
Okay, I really enjoyed this movie. The basic story is about a prostitute named Kelly, and she's trying to get away from her pimp. So the opening of the film, which is a great scene, which we can talk about. The opening of the film is 1961, and she's beating up her pimp. Mm-hmm. She takes the money he owes her, not a penny more, and then she leaves. And then we flash forward to 1963, and she shows up in this little small town. and we have to talk about how there's a lot of innuendo and a lot of like metaphors used, but she is there to like set up a new little life as a prostitute, and she meets like the town like cop and has, provides services. And he basically tells her, like, you cannot be a hoe in my town.
He's like, you can't set up shop here.
You cannot set up
He says
shop
something
here.
like, doesn't he say something like, they'll chop me up like a ripe banana or something?
So she looks in the mirror and realizes, like, this is not the life she wants for herself. So she gets a job at the local, like, children's hospital for, like, kids with disabilities.
I think there's some insinuation there because she is told that the person who runs the town, which was started by his great-great-grandfather, or whatever, Grant, J.L. Grant, he runs everything that's affiliated with the hospital.
Sure, but finishing the story, she gets a job in this hospital, and then it seems like her life is on track to, get away from prostituting when she meets, like, the town, like, the great-great-grandson of the man you just mentioned, who's, like, the super rich guy, a philanthropist, and like, the perfect bachelor. And he falls in love with her, and then wants to marry her, even after she tells him that she used to be a prostitute. So of course you're like, he's very accepting of her. Why is that? It's because he's a damn pedophile. Mm-hmm. And he thinks that if he marries a prostitute,
An abnormal woman.
Because if he marries an abnormal woman, then she's accustomed to dealing with like perverts.
Mm-hmm. So she won't judge him.
So she won't judge him. But the gag is, not only does she judge him, but she kills him.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't witness him, but it's implied that she witnesses him molesting a young girl. Mm-hmm. So she kills him. She goes to jail, and the final act of the film is her trying to like clear her name, which is she's not very good at it.
She's not clearing her name because she did kill someone.
Well, we need to talk about that, but she does end up getting her name cleared in a very clunky way, and then she's exonerated of the crime, which is outrageous because she did, like you said, kill someone, and then we see her leave the town. The end. Mm-hmm. I was howling. There are so many funny lines because there's so much innuendo. It's very campy, but I think probably the best way to start off is I think this feels like the original Showgirls.
I was struck. So I haven't watched this in years, but I remember it very clearly because I rented it from this place in Minneapolis called Cinema Revolution, which is long gone, with Jodorowsky's Sound to Sangre, and then being blown away because the opening scene is her wig being snatched off because she's bald, because her procurer, as she calls it, took vengeance on her and drugged her and shaved her head. But yes, I was struck by how many similarities there are to Verhoeven's Showgirls, which I don't recall Joe Esterhaus, who wrote Showgirls, referencing Naked Kiss as a template, but it's there in so many ways.
This film is the acting a little crunchy. The editing's interesting at times. It does feel camp, but I was very engaged.
I think it's very beautifully shot. Because he used something that was considered experimental at the time of that opening scene with a handheld camera.
So the prostitute's name is Kelly, and when she shows up to this small town, when she first walks into like the town square, we see that there's a big sign for the fashion show for handicapped children. So that's when I knew, like, Constance Towers is beautiful, and I thought every time I saw her face, and there are a lot of close-ups and a lot of her like serving looks and eyes and mouth. I just could not see Joan Crawford.
But it was a combination of people too. It's very Joan, but there are times like in a fantastic scene where she beats up Virginia Gray. She looked like she was giving me Jane Russell there. I thought of early, young Maggie Smith or Vanessa Redgrave too.
So when Kelly gets to the town, the way she's like selling her body is that she's saying she's selling champagne.
He's like, "Are you a traveling sales lady?"
Yeah, and it's a very interesting scene. And the name of her champagne is Angel Foam.
Angel Foam.
And then she's selling the champagne, but really she's selling pussy. So, they have that transaction. And then after she realizes that she doesn't want to prostitute anymore, she's looking for a place to live. And she passes this house that says like, it says something funny.
It says something about pleasant rooms.
Yeah, pleasant room for rent. And the lady who's renting the room is like this old lady who's like delusional. Mm-hmm. Because even Kelly says, like, don't you need a reference? Like, I'm a stranger to you. And the old lady says, come here, look in this mirror. Your reference is that face.
Yes, that was great. She's played by Betty Bronson, who played Peter Pan, I believe, as a young woman in the silent era. That scene was giving. I kept thinking, like, oh, if they recast this today, I'd love to see that with Tina Fey and Kathy Bates as those two women.
Oh God. Well, I don't know that Tina Fey, because Constance Towers is beautiful. And the way her character sort of carries herself, it reminded me of like June Cleaver, because everything is like lovely, very composed. It's a very interesting portrayal.
She becomes this like feminine superwoman scion for the community.
Getting back to the lady who rents her the room, it's very like Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, because she had like a man who she wanted to marry, but he went off to war and died, but she doesn't accept it. So she has this dress form in the guest room that's dressed up with her ex-beau's like military garb. And she's being very open with Kelly. And then at one point she's like, I realized the president was right. Charlie is dead and we'll never get married. Yeah. Like, this dialogue is out of control.
The dialogue is salty, but a lot of fun.
Okay, so there's quite a bit of time spent in this hospital for handicapped children where Kelly is like a nurse's aide. And the way that these nurses talk about the kids, I couldn't even write all the lines down, but it's stuff like, one more operation and that boy will have straight feet. And then there's scenes of them bathing these kids and like,
Patsy Kelly takes a phone call. Oh, this is for plastic surgery.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So the turning point is when the cop who she had, his name's Grant?
Griff.
The cop who she had sex with like early in the film, when he finds out that she's getting close to what's the man's name? She's Charlie? Who's the pedophile? Grant. Oh, Griff and Grant. Mm-hmm. That's right. When Griff realizes that Kelly's getting close to Grant, he gets upset because he's like, I'm not going to let my friend be with a prostitute.
His hold over Grant is that he saved him in the war, right?
Yeah. So that's a turning point. But then there's a lot happening because one of the nurses working with Kelly, there is across the river, like on the other side of town,
like in Twin Peaks,
there's like a brothel that's run by this woman named Candy,
played by Virginia Gray,
who looks severe.
She looks like she watches what she eats.
Yeah, she looks like she needs to eat something. Because Kelly knows about that life, she doesn't want her coworker to become a prostitute. So she goes over to that brothel and whoops Candy's ass, and that scene was pretty funny.
It's pretty good.
She beats the hell out of her,
and takes because Candy is the brothel madam spies this character named Buff, who's like dead in the head, that works with Constance Towers, Kelly, but she's tired of the work because it's depressing her, and she wears one of Kelly's dresses out in the town, and Candy sees her and it's like, oh, you'd make a good bonbon girl. That's what they call them.
Yeah.
And she gives her $25, and Constance Towers stuffs that money in Virginia Gray's mouth.
Yeah. We need to pause for 1 second. Okay. So before we finish with the brothel, there's a scene. The women in the brothel, like the bonbon girls, are very aggressive with like the patrons. There's one scene where like one of the girls karate chops a man to it's slapsticky at some points.
Yeah.
Okay. So after Grant asks Kelly to marry him, and this is after she told him she's a hoe,
immediately he's like, I love you.
I love you. I love you. She goes home and she's talking to that dress form, like
named Charlie, I think.
That's named Charlie, the lady of the house, her old boyfriend or whatever. And I thought that was a really funny scene because she's trying to debate whether or not she should marry him. Mm-hmm. That was a good one. Okay, the hospital for the handicapped children, again, a lot of time spent there, and these kids are working on like a musical production, mm-hmm. and these poor kids in every scene are wearing these pirate hats.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
But there's a moment where Kelly's like No. When Kelly goes back to tell Grant, yes, I'll marry you, she puts on like Beethoven.
She put on the Fifth Symphony, yep.
And she's conducting the symphony, but this bitch is way off.
She's offbeat in every possible way, yeah.
But she is just ecstatic, like, oh, isn't today a beautiful day?
But it's like she woke him up. His butler's like, it's 6 a.m.
I thought his butler was interesting because he seemed gay to me. So I thought that was kind of interesting. What I meant about the Children's Hospital, them putting on the show, when they finally do the show, it's not really a production. It's just these kids standing in the classroom
singing at her.
They're singing, and then Kelly starts singing. Kelly, Constance Towers has a beautiful voice.
I read that she originally wanted to be an opera singer.
I mean, the song is laughable because we were making fun of it while it was happening, but her voice is
it's pretty good.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So Kelly gets her wedding dress because the lady whose house she lives in is also a seamstress, so she makes her a dress. She puts it in a box, and then she goes over to Grant's to show him. And when she gets there, he's acting kind of weird, and then all of a sudden this little girl runs out. And then there's like 2 close-up shots of their faces, and like he's trying to explain to her what's happening and about how he...
It's coded in that way that I can't imagine audiences at the time. Like most of the stuff you can pick up on quite easily in this film, but it's kind of like in Suddenly Last Summer when Elizabeth Taylor's screaming, "We procured for him." It's like, but what do you mean exactly?
You don't think that was clear to people? Because to me in Suddenly Last Summer and in this movie, it's very obvious.
To us now in a contemporary world, but back then, can you imagine like these suburbanites going to this film and being like, huh?
Yeah, I thought like the fact that there's this little girl running and he looks scared was very obvious that he was doing something inappropriate with this little girl. But anyway, Kelly kills him, and then we see that the next scene is like the newspaper says, "Grant is dead, slain by prostitute."
Oh, you know what? She hits him with the phone, and there's that great like thump on the piano when she does that. That just reminded me. I wonder if John Waters is referencing that in Serial Mom.
I also felt like this kind of felt like Hitchcock to me.
Oh, yeah.
No?
Yeah. Oh. Well, and maybe like cheaper Hitchcock, like William Castle's Homicidal.
There's, we see like these girls skipping rope, and I thought those are some creepy ass girls. They reminded me of those girls in like the Nightmare on Elm Street movie talking about 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
And then there's a baby in a perambulator that's just sitting out on the street.
Oh my God, then we get twice. There's just a random baby in a stroller on the street. Like, who is this baby's mama?
Well, because motherhood is normalizing, and it's revealed that Kelly can't have children, and yet it's like the world, this suburban world she's in is like trying to impress that upon her.
So it was very frustrating once Kelly is in jail because first of all, she killed a man.
Yeah.
Like, she murdered him. She wasn't being attacked. It was not self-defense. It was just a crime of passion and rage. So she should be in trouble. She should have just reported it to the police. So then, of course, she's sitting in jail, and Griff is like, you can't even get your story straight. Like, what is going on? Who's this girl he molested? He doesn't use the word molest, and she can't like conjure up the image of the girl. She can't even say how old the girl was, what she looked like. And then finally, one day while Kelly is looking out of the jailhouse window, she sees the girl and she's yelling at her, like, "Come here," which obviously scared the girl away. Then when one day she finally convinces Griff to look for the girl because Buff gives information, because the brothel lady, Candy, who Kelly beat up, originally she comes to the jail and tells Griff, "Oh yeah, Kelly, she came to see me because she wanted to come up with this like blackmail scheme to murder Grant," which is not true. So then, of course, the cop is like, "Oh, bitch, you plan to kill him." But then Buff, the girl who, the $25, that's why Candy got beat up, that girl finally comes and says, "No, Candy didn't go there for that. She went there to..."
And the catch is that Griff has a close connection to Buff because of her father. Was a war.
So it's because of that Griff says, "Okay, let me find this girl," and they do like a scene where there's a lineup of girls, which I thought was funny because all these little young white girl. They all look the same.
Right.
And even me, I'm like, I don't even know which one it is. And then the one she finally chooses, I'm like, I wouldn't have been able to tell.
If there's one with those teeth that
she
look
does
like
have bad teeth. Well, because she has like bad teeth, and they look like they're adult teeth.
It looks like she probably had recently lost her children's teeth in the front, and then
so they're growing in crooked,
or they put fake ones in.
Yeah, they look really bad. But anyway, so then when they pick the girl, the cop just lets Kelly talk to this girl
to scream at her in desperation.
And initially she's screaming at her, so the girl gets scared and runs away. And then Griff tells her, you need to approach, like, I know you can't have kids and you're not a mother, but you need to approach her like a mother. So they try round 2, and then Kelly's being more nurturing, and then the girl just spills all the tea. Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember you. You're the lady with the box. Yeah, he was playing a game with me where he said no one could know, it's a secret. And then the next scene is Griff telling Kelly, you've been released of all charges. And then the next scene is Kelly leaving the jail, and the entire community is there because she's like a hero.
But they're not cheering for her.
They're not cheering for her.
I read the insert essay for the Criterion film, and they compared it to them looking like Invasion of the Body Snatchers out there.
Yeah, it was interesting. But that's the end of the movie, is that Kelly sort of walks away from this town to, I guess, go set up shop somewhere else.
Which, two things. Interestingly, I also read there was a novelization of this film, and Sam Fuller for the novelization, the scene where Griff is telling her, talk to her like she's your own child, like, you're not Kelly the woman, you're Kelly the mother. I guess in the novelization it says, talk to her like you're not Kelly the whore, you're Kelly the mother.
Oh.
So, yes, it's bookended in a way that's very much like Nomi Malone, Elizabeth Berkley in Showgirls, where we are introduced to her traveling to Vegas and see her leaving it. This woman is doing the same thing, traveling into this community and leaving it. She's also supposed to be self-taught. Like she's well-read, but as I've also, this has happened to me on many occasions, you think you know how to say something because you've read it for years, but you don't. So she's like butchering all these names, because one of my first notes was like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Goethe. But that's the Versailles scene in Showgirls.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of remarkable. It would actually make a great double feature. Mm-hmm. This movie first and then Showgirls. I really enjoyed it. We watched. You have the Criterion, so it's available on Amazon Prime for free. But you have the actual Criterion, and then the artwork on the insert for the Criterion is actually a really cool image of her. Although they give her blonde hair in the artwork, but in the movie she's brunette. In the initial scene, and then she becomes blonde. But
it is pure pulp fuel.
There's a sort of interview with Constance Towers in like the early 2000s. 2007. So she's probably like in her late 60s, early 70s.
She's still alive,
and she looks great.
Yeah, she's very fly.
She's very sweet. It wasn't. I mean, there were no revelations in there, but it's fun to hear her talk about it, and I think the movie, and actually it was more interesting to hear her talk about Sam Fuller and his sort of personality and how it is infused into the story. I think the actual story and the writing is quite good. I think the acting is what makes it seem camp.
Well, it's, they weren't able to really vocalize what they're talking about either in so much of it. So there's this kind of removal from reality already.
Right.
And how people would speak. But there are so many good parts in the moments in the dialogue, like when she's screaming at Biff, she's like, you'll be sleeping on the skin of a nightmare.
Oh my God.
And then Griff telling her that there's no way that Kelly could ever go straight. He's like, your body is your passport.
Well, what else do you want to say about this movie?
Sam Fuller wrote his autobiography. He dealt a lot with racism in his films, like House of Bamboo, Crimson Kimono, even all the way through his early 80s work with White Dog. But it's important to note that in the early 60s, he was solo. Shock Corridor in 1963, which also stars Constance Towers, and some considered The Naked Kiss like a spiritual sequel to that because of her linking suggestion in there about how her previous boyfriend was locked in a mental asylum, which is what happens in Shock Corridor. These were independently financed, without a studio. He references in his autobiography that Constance Towers shaved her head. She says, I did not. You can see him wearing a skull cap.
Oh, that is something that we learned, is that the mythos was that she had shaved her head. But I think, when was this movie released?
64.
So obviously watching it in 1964 on the big screen with film, it looks quite good. But watching the Criterion Blu-ray in high def, it's very obvious she's wearing a skull cap.
Yes, but there's an excerpt in the insert from his autobiography titled Want to Be a Lindy. And he talks about being a young crime journalist for New York Graphic. And he would call in his stories from this local brothel because the madam was amused by him. But he, through his experiences there, kind of got to hear all these prostitutes talk. And he references a woman named Helen who he would often go get... after their early bird clients, they would go get donuts and coffee, and he would run errands for them. And he brought coffee back to a woman named Helen one day, and the madam was like, "No, you got somebody waiting." She's like, "Oh, will you hold my coffee for me?" And he said, "It'll be cold." And she's like, "No, it won't." But he also talks about, them bickering because the madam would take, over half of their profits. And Helen, he said, I overheard her complaining about it, and the madam said, "Do you want to be a Lindy?" Which is a reference to Lindbergh's solo flight over the Atlantic, like Be Without Protection. And Sam Fuller, interestingly, compares himself at this period to being a Lindy because he's going at it alone, because so many projects of his fell through because of, terrible producers or crooked producers. But yeah, he's a fascinating person. I highly recommend, most of his filmography. But Naked Kiss is a favorite.
Well, the subject matter is serious. I think it's actually like a good Sunday afternoon with other people and some,
We didn't talk about
mimosas.
What the Naked Kiss means.
Oh, okay. Oh, actually, okay. So because I put the movie on and then you were like, "Oh my God, I know this movie. I love this movie. Do you know what the Naked Kiss means?" And I said, well, I'm assuming since I saw the word pedophile that maybe the Naked Kiss refers to like maybe what the pedophile's telling the young girl that he wants to do. But then in the film, it's made to seem like she says like she could tell.
Where her first kiss with Michael Dante, she recoils.
Okay, but then in the interview in the Criterion video, Constance Towers says that it's also called like an iron kiss.
Like it's prostitute lingo. Supposedly,
but she didn't explain it well in that interview. And then in the movie, what I thought it meant is like when she kissed him, she could smell something. And that's what...
She says it's a taste.
It's a taste. But like so I assumed it was something quite vulgar. Like she could taste, like maybe another female's vagina on his lips. And that's why she recoiled. But then when Constance Towers describes it in the early 2000s, she talks about how it's like a sense, like
smell a sense of snow,
like a gut instinct that something's wrong. But I don't think that's what it means. I actually should have looked it up. Like,
I thought that, based on these vague explanations, was that there was something about it that clued you off that this person was a degenerate of some sort.
Yeah, I took it more literally, like that. Because when you get close to people, you can smell, when things have happened, or
sure.
You can smell sex. And that's what I assumed it meant when we saw her recoil from him. But either way, it's very interesting. All right. So that's the Naked Kiss. Mm-hmm. What do we have going on this week?
Oh God, a new Ron Howard movie. Great. And then what else? Not a lot coming out. There's an LGBTQ plus horror film called Hypochondriac I'm interested in watching.
We can watch that today probably.
A Juliette Binoche, Morgan Freeman film called Paradise Highway.
Oh, and then a sequel to The Reef? That shark movie?
I don't know. Oh, yeah, that's in the list. I haven't asked about that.
You already know I want to watch that.
Yeah, that might be the type of film where they don't give screeners for. And then, we published it way too early, but our review of Resurrection starring Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth, that film finally comes out this week.
Yeah, I accidentally, based on your guidance, I accidentally published it too early, but yeah, that movie's coming out. I guess we can't talk about that movie either.
What?
3,000 Years of Longing.
Oh, yeah, that premiered at Cannes in May. So
We saw that and reviewed it, but it's not coming out till like
the end of August.
the end of like for a month from now. But I really liked that.
Yeah,
movie.
I like that too. And then we see the Predator prequel this week, and I think Bullet Train's the week after that. But yeah, all of that's coming up.
All right. Do you have a quote for us?
Well, because Sam Fuller was, the talk of the town, but I had a couple quotes from him. I liked heroes, don't believe in them.
Oh, okay.
And
Condoms, don't use them.
I feel like this would resonate with you, but when you're at the end of your rope, all you have to do is make one foot move out in front of the other. Just take the next step. That's all there is to it.
I mean, that's pretty much how I live. Just trying to get to the next day.
Oh my God.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Bye.